Okay, so what's up, my friends? I'm not sure exactly how to start this video. I've thought about it all day, but how much can you talk about certain things? And when it comes to this virus, it's not like I want to sit and talk about the pandemic or what may be coming down the road. That's not my intention for this video, but rather, what can we do to help one another? Now, I know there have been a lot of conspiracy theories flowing around that this is overblown, that it's just an election year, or that somehow, every single government is in cahoots on a giant conspiracy to lie about it. Maybe. It's possible. People say nobody's died. People say that it's not real. That's fine. You want to believe what you want to believe. I have no say on that. But I would like to say this much. When it does come to your town, you might be a little more willing to believe in it when you see your grandma dying or your mother dying or your friends dying. And that sounds morbid, and it is, but I think a lot of folks don't really understand the implications of what's going on here. This is an unusual virus which is coming around at a time when we already have the flu in full mode. And then people will say, well, people die from the flu every year. Yeah, 20 to 80,000 people in America alone die from the flu every year. It's absolutely true. But we have designed our hospitals to cater to these people. We've designed our hospitals because we understand how many flu patients we're going to get, how many respirators we will need, how many different, masks, face shields, whatever it might be, and especially some of this equipment people use, like ventilators, which isn't as much used on that. And I don't want to get into the details of the virus. I know a lot of people say it's just a cold, and, it's easy to say until you get sick. But here I am. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy on YouTube. What do I know? Let me just say that I've spent a lot of hours, many, many dozens of hours researching viruses and their impact on society. I've always been fascinated with them, not just the pandemic in 1918, but various flu epidemics. And I've always had this hankering suspicion that something was going to happen like this. And as did most of the top virologists, they all said that this was coming and we should be prepared for it. And people have turned this political. They're talking about how, oh, well, they terminated, this group of people who could have prevented this, or that we should have done this travel ban, or we shouldn't have done this travel ban. Let me just say this virus is nasty. It doesn't care what kind of rules you put into place unless you go into full lockdown. Even then, I have my suspicions that once China releases its lockdown in Wuhan, by the way, for people who say, look, China conquered it easily, you realize Wuhan has been in lockdown for a month and a half almost. It is insane how long these people have been locked away in their homes. Now Italy's in lockdown. Now France, Spain, they are following suit. Gradually, every country is going to be in lockdown, and Americans are going to be sitting there saying, no, it's not happening. It's not real. Well, I want to get to the point here. The important part is that we take care of our neighbors. My hope is that this brings us closer together. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope nothing happens, but I get the feeling that it's going to get a lot worse based on my personal research for what it's worth. And you want to take care of your elderly neighbors, the people who are most at risk. I tried to take my neighbors some sanitizer and cookies the other day, but they didn't answer. I didn't want to disturb them. I figured maybe they're afraid to answer their door, or maybe they just, weren't awake. I didn't want to wake them up if they were chilling. But call up your friends, your parents, anybody who might need a hand. Not just because they're old. Maybe you have a friend who is financially strapped, and you want to make sure that they can get enough food and some extra stuff for their friends or in their family so they can settle down for a while and not have to keep going out to the store for little errands. Because the less interactions we have with people, the quicker we can combat this and hopefully find a way to, ease the burden, as they call, drop the curve or lower the curve, which means that a lot of people are going to get sick. But if they all get sick at once, we overburden the system and there's not enough hospital beds. We are already at full capacity in many of the hospitals. And it's a dead serious issue. If you end up getting the virus and you have to go to a hospital, you will likely not be able to find a hospital bed and treatment, As much as you think America has this greatest healthcare, it absolutely does not. But it's not just that factor. You can't blame it on American healthcare. You can blame it on an epidemic that came out of the blue, and it's going to annihilate us to a point. I don't mean like the human species by any means. What I'm saying is that it's going to really put us back, set us back a little bit, and make us think about what's important. And you might have friends that need help, but the things that a lot of folks don't consider about school. My kids' schools were closed on Friday. They announced that all schools in Washington State are closed for till April 23rd, a month and a half. And so for me, I can do it because I work from home. A lot of parents are nurses. In fact, I believe in New York State, I heard that like 23% of nurses rely on school, partially at least, for daycare while they're at work. And when you think about that, that's a quarter of the force that we need the most at this time. And that's why Cuomo kept open New York schools, whereas the rest of the country is starting to shut them down. It's not that he doesn't want to protect his city. It's that the parents, the people, the workers are demanding to not close the schools because they need it. It's not just for childcare. A lot of lower income students depend on school for their lunches. And these are important points people don't realize. Lunches are important, reduced fee lunches. So a lot of schools are actually allowing people to come in and still get their lunches. Look, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm hoping that after this is over, we can rebuild our communities in a more coherent manner. I'm not saying it's going to destroy society by any means, but we are a lot more independent and savvy than people give credit to each other, right? We have Americans are pretty crafty, pretty amazing people when we're allowed to, do what we need to do. More bureaucracy, more laws have just caused us to become defeated and beat down. But it's not just the laws or the government, it's the fact that we've become a corporatocracy, basically. A giant financial institution, funding wars and thinking that the stock market is the most important thing that we have in this world. But it's not. And when the stock market crashed the other day and then came back up and crashed, a lot of folks don't realize why it went back up. The government injected $1.5 trillion into the economy. I would say $1.5 trillion could go a long way in Americans' pockets. I'm not going to do the math. You can look at it for yourself, but it would give us each enough to at least help. Meanwhile, all they can get out is 1/30th of that or 1/40th of that for the actual funding for the crisis. $50 billion. And they talk about it like it's this huge number. We got $50 billion. Congress passed this bill to help us fight this pandemic. Well, it's not nearly even, it's a tiny drop in the hat compared to what they gave to the, financial markets. And they will say that they need to prop them up, and I don't want to get into that. I already posted my gripe about that shit. But the government's not here to protect you. They're here to protect corporate interests. And you can see it every time the president speaks when he talks about the stock markets. At a time like this, you should not be talking about the stock markets during a presidential emergency address. But that's what they say eases the fear of the markets. Look, I'm not affected by the market any more than anybody else is. I'm not saying that stocks and businesses don't matter. What I'm saying is that people put way too much faith in this system that is robbing them penny by penny and putting it into these offshore accounts and these trust funds. I'm getting off track here. I have a very independent world lens, the way I see things, just like everyone else does. And I believe in the greater good. I'm not a nihilist so much as I believe in, I guess you could call it utilitarian. I somewhat believe in the utilitarian philosophy. So you call it utilitarian, stoic, nihilist, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the idea that sometimes we have to sacrifice the way we live in order for a greater good. And people don't understand it when I say I don't care if the stock market crashes, or I believe we need it, or even a complete destruction of modern society. Not for even our sake. Because it's weird to say, but I don't really feel that humans are the most important thing. I feel that humanity is the most important thing. And a lot of people have died, and a lot of people will die, and there will be catastrophes. The larger our population grows and depends on this society and the way we do things, the harder it's going to be when it crashes down. I'd like to read, actually. That reminds me, I had all these notes and I just said screw it. I ignored it. But this one little thing I wrote earlier says, sometimes a building is so unstable and unsafe that any attempt to save it by remodeling would only endanger the tenants who live there. If you tear it down and rebuild it with a better foundation, it can serve the people once again. In the meantime, many will be homeless, but the ends may justify the means. No building is too big to fail. And it got me, obviously the metaphor is, the markets, it's themselves, We have enough food. People talk about, oh, how would we get our food if the markets crashed? Farmers still grow food. Did you know that farmers are ordered to destroy a lot of their crops in order to keep the markets high and competitive? Yeah, we destroy food, destroy crops in order to keep the markets competitive. They throw away milk. They throw away meat. They throw away all kinds of shit to keep the markets flowing. If you were to eliminate Wall Street altogether, it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference in most people's lives once you fast forward about 20 years. We'd actually be better off, in my opinion, because they wouldn't be siphoning off that slave labor, if you will, going off to the highest bidder. So, yeah. We either learn now or we learn later. The system is too fragile. If each one of us learned to farm, I did the math earlier, I don't recall. I said if even 1% of humans who were able learned to farm a small part of their yard or land, you could add a huge surplus to the food supply if that's your concern. But it seems that people don't think of food as the main concern. What else do you really need besides food and shelter? Folks are so wrapped up in buying a fucking pair of $500 Nikes, it's time for that society to fall apart. And I'm not saying this virus will do that. I'm saying that it's kind of this cognitive dissonance I have between wanting things to go along as normal and having this nihilist attitude that everything has to crumble to start over. It's a difficult thing. It's an ambivalence, if you will. I don't know what to do about it, but I've always felt that way. It's human nature to want to do our best, and in my heart I feel like doing our best requires an utter recreation of the way we do business. Not back to the old ways. It's not, I don't have this kind of a romantic version of, when humans were great. I think we can all be better than we've ever been. And I look kind of towards that communal lifestyle. People say, oh, well, they're just, leeching on society. No, they're not. A lot of the times people have found a way to live together without being, selfish, without thinking, oh my God. I heard a story today when I was reading an article about a family. They were saying, what do families do? They're like, oh, families are going stir crazy because they can't go to their usual hobbies and destinations, and the kids are out of school, so the family's home together. And I thought, what kind of a fucked up family are you if this virus hasn't even become an issue yet? School was just canceled, and you guys are already having an issue with getting along and finding something to do? I mean, Jesus Christ, people. Sorry, but that's just, it just goes to show what we value. We're so go, go, go in this society out there that we find out what's important when we're sitting with our families. I woke up this morning and it was snowing, and I thought, what a perfect day for the day after Friday the 13th, 3/14, known as Pi Day. There's a fucking, a virus out there, and people are... A lot of folks say people are panicking. I would say I call it preparation. I prepared a while back, and I feel very confident that I'm good to go. Sit it out for a while. But I care about my neighbors. I'm not fixated on the stock market. I'm not too concerned about how much money, the $50 billion that they pumped into, to this supposed, whatever the crisis is. They say they're going to help, the average worker. It's only $150 per person if you do the math. It's not enough to do anything. This is going to be an unmitigated disaster. We will have to sit at home. We won't be able to work. We won't be able to make any income. And a lot of people will be screwed over by this. And I really feel for the people. There was that basketball player who got the virus. He donated 100 grand to help to pay the wages of the people who worked at the NBA place where, they play the games. I don't give a shit about sports, but I just thought it was cool that he gave to the people who worked at the hot dog stands, the people who worked at the gates, things like that. But did any of the multi-billionaire managers or owners of the teams donate or kick in? No, of course not. Not until they were called out and then maybe they tried to save face. It's like, this is a time when we need to come together. There was one asshole who went out and bought 18,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. There's an article about it. He went through, I think, Kentucky and Illinois, at every small town, buying up every sanitizer he could, and started selling them for like $18 or more a pop. From the Dollar Tree, he got them all. And sold them for like, $18-20 a pop. Said he made like 40 grand or some shit. Until they shut him down on Amazon and eBay for price gouging, which thank God they did. And they had an actual article in the news about this guy standing there in front of his garage full of sanitizer. It says, man stuck with 18,000 bottles of sanitizer. This guy had the fucking balls to pose for, not just for a news article, but then to below say, I felt like I was doing a service to society. Why do you think there's a shortage when there's assholes like that? You don't need all that sanitizer. You don't need all that toilet paper. None of that shit's going to matter in this case. It's not going to protect you. But it is a panic mode that people get into. They don't know what else to do. There are people who go out and buy these things because they hear other people are buying them. But as for the price gougers, shame on those bastards. I've got masks and stuff. I'm not going to go hawk them on eBay for $100 a piece when it's not even going to make a difference wearing one. People are really shameful. So the point I want to make there is that there's two kinds of people in a crisis. There are the shepherds and there are the wolves. And hopefully you're a shepherd and you take care of each other. We live in a money worship society. And I know this video sounds like I've been complaining the whole time, because I have such empathy and emotion as to what's going on in the world. But at the same time, I'm frustrated that people are so hung up on the cash aspect of it. Fuck money. Let it go, right? People say, what will we do? You'll find a way, people. You'll find a way. You're humans. You're ingenious. Even if the whole system collapsed, even if there was a solar flare that took out the grid, you still have to do shit. You still find a way to get by. Plagues happen. Isn't it coincidental that there's a huge locust plague right now in the Middle East? I thought about that today. I was like, my wife mentioned something. I was like, what else is going on? That the ancients must have thought was like, oh my God, what have we done wrong? Well, red tide was always a plague because you had you basically polluted the waters to the point where there were huge red algal blooms. Well, a virus is basically our punishment for living too close together and for the way we do business. It's just the world we live in. So I'm just wishing you all the best. I know a lot of people don't believe this is even happening. I've heard people say, where's the bodies? I don't know anybody's sick. Somebody left a comment the other day that said that, I haven't seen any bodies. Then I see an aerial view of like this mass grave. Then somebody says it's fake. Look, I'm trusting that this is a real virus and that it's really ravaging humans. It's nothing new. This has happened to us every so often through history. Just back to the Black Plague and way beyond that. And plagues happen, So some share and some profit on the fear. And hopefully you're one of the people who wants to help your neighbor and do something good. And I don't know what else to say about it. I got to go. My buddy's going to show up pretty quick. So thanks for listening. I hope I covered most of the points I wanted to. There's not much else to say. I'm not going to go into the deaths or how bad this is going to get. You can do your own homework on that. These are just my opinions on the fact that we are so stuck on the money that we're missing the humanity. The whole time they did the presidential address, the stock market ticker was just sitting there in the corner. It's like, that's what people care about, money. I get it. Money is resources, but there's other ways to gain those resources. I have a dark side when it comes to that. And so I'll leave that for another time. Be well, my friends. Take care.